we could just like start that video. So what I've been doing lately is just kind of trying to create an infrastructure for multiple applications to run inside of a browser context. Very similar to some of the stuff that Rick was doing. Sorry, somebody has an echo. It's kind of distracting. Anyway, some of the stuff that Rick was doing, why I was asking about threading, is I'm super interested in how we can all kind of build worlds collaboratively instead of just jumping into a single lonely experience. What we have here is a browser tool that I made for kind of creating spatial applications. One of the simplest use cases that you can have is basically dropping in a model into a world and basically composing multiple models together. So what we have here is actually a tool where you can drop in either GLTFs, VRMs, or Vox files and load them up into any other Steam application. In this case, this is Half-Life Alyx running with my overlay system in multiplayer with somebody else and pulling out some of the gear that I created inside of the browser. You can see, oh, okay, maybe we kind of missed that in that video, but I have this overlay kind of on my wrist where I can jump into a world with somebody else in multiplayer, pull out assets from my inventory, and kind of transfer them into the world of Half-Life Alyx. And this is all just stuff that was basically designed inside of the browser, just models. Yeah, so how does this work? Basically, I'm trying to come up with a standard way of packaging these things. In case you didn't know, the web has advanced quite considerably in the past year or so in terms of these efforts. There's not only do we have WebXR now that's shipped, we have great GLTF support in all of the regular engines like 3JS. We have things like SteamVR supporting overlays where you have 144 hertz rendering of WebXR on top of something like Half-Life Alyx, which itself is a very demanding game. And we also have standards like Webpackage, which allow you to essentially take an entire application of WebXR, all of the models, all of the assets, and open it up as a package that you can load up into any other game. And this works in every single headset right now because it's 100% web-based. Works on Quest, it works on Index, which I'm in right now. I don't have it loaded right now, but I could have had it loaded right here in Hubs, and I could basically be trading assets with you guys if you guys also had the same thing on your wrist. So yeah, basically what I'm kind of trying to promote here is a standard workflow where you have something that's based on all these standards, that's GLTF, VRM, Vox, WebAssembly, WebXR, Webpackage, and basically coming up with a packaging system that allows you to put all these things together and trade them as units. One thing that's, I don't know if it's obvious in this video, but there is also integration with Ethereum, IPFS, and OpenSea. So there's a command line tool that works exactly like NPM. You can basically publish packages, you can build them out of GLTFs, out of WebXR, out of WebAssembly, and you can publish them to IPFS as well as Ethereum, which is tradable as ERC1155 tokens on OpenSea. And what that means is I can grab a model from anywhere. I can create a model inside of the browser whenever I just feel like it. I can create a token out of it, and I can put that up on OpenSea, and I can trade it with anybody who has a private key wallet. Works with MetaMask, and it works with pretty much every single browser. It also works with the command line tools that we've developed. If you guys wanted to actually take a look at some of the soft launch that we're doing today, it's webaverse.com, webaverse.com. There's a bunch of tools there that we're trying to get up and running. And you should be able to see these tokens, including, for example, this M3 banner that we put up here. That basically you can see on OpenSea. You can interact with it as if it were a token, and you can make me an offer. You can even buy it on the testnet right now. Everything's on testnet, by the way. Yeah, so kind of like, why are we doing this? Why did I kind of get inspired to get started on this in the first place? And the reason is I feel like we're in this state of infinite incompatibility. And we're also in a state where we're dealing with major nobody cares, which I kind of like see as the personification of Facebook and like all these other super well-funded companies that are kind of trying to do the same thing in a very incompatible way. And I would include, for example, Unity there, VR chat to a lesser extent. But we have all of these different things that are trying to kind of accomplish the exact same thing, but they're super incompatible. So we have Unity hubs, we have VR Chat, Allspace, Rec Room, Exokit. I put myself inside that blame bucket. Neos VR, Anarchy Arcade, CryptoVoxels, Decentraland, Sandbox, Facebook. All of us were kind of like trying to accomplish the same thing, where we're trying to create this ecosystem of applications where everybody can kind of work together in a collaborative space and have meaningful exchanges of value, um, which I think we all agree needs to happen, and it's probably going to happen. But we're also working in this context where everybody's redoing the same thing in a completely incompatible way. If I load something in Decentraland, not only can I not load that in VR, but that's certainly not going to be compatible with any of these other things. Same thing with VR Chat. They recently released a programming language called Udon, which is basically WebAssembly, except it's 100% incompatible with WebAssembly. So none of this other stuff is going to work. It's also highly tied to Unity, and we have like a similar story for pretty much every other system here. Despite me being a fan of most of these things, like we're in hubs right now, and we're going to be doing a VR chat mixer later. Um, like I'm a huge fan of all of these things, and I think we're all accomplishing really awesome things, and we're all figuring out what needs to happen to create these kinds of interoperable applications. Um, but I think we need to be doing a lot more. And so what I've been doing here is kind of just coming up with the tools based on web technologies, based on standards, um, based on stuff that I didn't even invent. Because I think it's super important that we stop inventing things ourselves. I think there's too much already, and I think a lot of it is great. So what I'd like to see more of is how can we reuse the existing technologies that we have, for example, the web, in order to create packages that work everywhere. For example, I think what web package could solve is not only could we get multiple applications running at the same time, we could get no more broken links. Because we can choose to host our things locally. We can package them up into a thing that I can grab and deploy into the world, rather than referencing something outside. We could have no more broken models. I think I might be one of the world's experts on this because I wrote a 3JS IK inverse kinematics avatar thing. The models that we were all trying to load inside there were super broken in terms of like the bone structure, and that's all just because we could not ship the codec, the decoder and the engine, along with the model. And that's kind of like the web model, right? You're shipping the libraries alongside the data itself. Another thing that we could solve with packaging systems is distribution. You can publish to IPFS because it's just this one package. You can blast it up anywhere. Could be DAT as well. And you have true ownership. If you have a package, you can sign it and you can put it up on Ethereum as a token. And that can be tied to the IPFS infrastructure. So you have true signed trackable ownership. And this actually has very interesting legal ramifications too, because a lot of people are struggling with the problem, especially creators, with people copying their work and them not getting credited for it. I think that's a lot of the reason that people use VR chat in the first place. It's because for all of its faults, I think it has an excellent IP solution. Everything is kind of locked down and creators feel very safe in deploying their content over there. And I think we could solve a lot of that if we had some nice packaging solution that could be signed and tracked on Ethereum. And the legal ramifications of that are there's something called the right of first sale, where we can buy a model or some piece of copyrighted content. And what that means is we have the right to resell it. That only works if you're not selling a copy. That only works if you're selling the exact same thing. If I go to Sketchfab and I download myself a sword, I can resell that to people as long as I am giving up my right to use it. And I think that's a huge use case of blockchains, actually, because you can provably assign that ownership. And there's a whole bunch of technical things that you can do underneath there where, for example, the package can only be downloaded if you have the ownership on a blockchain. And that has yet to be tested in court, but I think it's a really interesting kind of use case there. And another thing, I think a lot of us are struggling as creators to figure out sales models where all of this stuff can not only be owned by us, but where we can be provably compensated in some way. I think a lot of the open source culture is missing that little something there where people feel a need to pay for stuff rather than just getting everything for free. And I think OpenSea, for a lot of the things that it does wrong, once again, I think one thing it did like really right is it allowed creators to monetize their work. And there's a whole bunch of crazy economies that can kind of bootstrap themselves in the metaverse there. I think CryptoVoxels is a prime example there, where you have Ben Nolan. He created CryptoVoxels, which is the platform base layer that everybody deploys to. Then you have the artists, which deploy art onto the CryptoVoxels platform. And then everybody is kind of using OpenSea to trade in these assets and be meaningfully compensated. And that also feeds back into Ben's incentives to continue to develop the CryptoVoxels platform, because OpenSea actually gives back a cut to the platform developers. So there's a whole bunch of interesting sales models that you can get there as well. But I think one of the main things that we really need to do, on top of just like kind of testing out these kinds of experiments, is I would like to see something that's akin to kind of an W3C working group. For example, something like the immersive web, but more geared towards some of these challenges specifically of spatial applications, especially multiple spatial applications at a time, and in a social context where we're all kind of like loading these things together, using layers, using ownership, using identity models. And I would like to see things like standards evolve here. So for example, we could have this application package thing becoming a true standard. We could have VRM becoming a standard. For example, the VRM consortium is actively trying to get the VRM standard for avatars into the W3C. So what we could have is we could solve some of the crazy avatar interoperability problems that we're all kind of struggling with. I actually see a whole bunch of really cool avatars here. So I think we're making like some progress in that area, but it's not nearly enough. I see a lot of robots here still. So yeah, wouldn't it be awesome if you could just kind of drop into any game, pull out a package, and literally put on a skin for yourself that somebody else made, or you could trade skins, kind of like VR chat, except VR chat that works everywhere, no matter which game you're in. I think we can do it. I think the technology's there, and I think really the main thing that's missing is the willpower and the structures for collaborating on this kind of stuff, which is why I said W3C working group. So I'm actually in talks with a whole bunch of people that are also interested in that. I'm going to be at the VR chat mixer later if you wanted to chat about this kind of standard stuff. Super interesting to me. But also, if you wanted to try out any of the stuff that I kind of showed here, stuff that you see in the videos, it's the stuff that that's on webaverse.com. There's a whole bunch of tools there, and if you want to get in touch, yeah, just let me know. And another thing, I also minted 3 commemorative Metaverse Makers tags. So if you have an Ethereum address on Rinkeby, yeah, just talk to me and I'll get you one of those. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and there's only going to be 10 of these ever. So yeah, if you want to kind of participate and like explore what it means to own a piece of the early metaverse in terms of these packaging standards, yeah, talk to me and give me your Ethereum address and I'll get you a copy of one of those. But yeah, that's my talk. I know that's really highly loaded. If there's any questions, I'd love to take them though. It's on Rinkeby. But I'll probably move it over to mainnet once things stabilize a little bit. Also, if you guys want to test out some of the packaging stuff, there is an NPM-like packaging. Okay, great. There is a packaging tool that you could test out right now if you want to start publishing this stuff to the Rinkeby testnet. where basically you can take a VRM GLB Vox model and yeah, create a token out of it that you can see in OpenSea, that you can trade, and that you can even load up as a spatial application inside some of the other projects that I've been working on, like Metachromium, which is the thing that you see here that allows you to basically run web applications inside of Steam VR, inside of like Half-Life Alyx, as well as the other video. This is just some B-roll from the last presentation that I did. It demonstrates some other stuff from Metachromium, where we're basically in VR chat. We're in a whole bunch of these different worlds, and and we're loading web content inside there. Despite the fact that I've never met any VR chat developers, this is all just running as a composition on top of Steam VR. But it's also compatible with regular web standards. Yeah. If there's any questions, could you repeat them in the chat? If I missed anything. Or we can just take them if anybody's on voice chat. Yes, it probably will come out on Steam. The only reason I don't have that here for you guys yet is because, frankly, I didn't have the time. There's a whole bunch of stuff kind of flying in the metaverse, as you can imagine, these days. Yeah, so probably follow me on Twitter. And if you're more interested, then probably join the Discord for ExoKit, and I'll let you guys know when it's up on Steam. Thanks.